I was supposed to protect him. Instead, I became the danger. I destroyed something I never meant to break. I let the loneliness twist me, let the attention blind me, and in doing so, I betrayed the only soul in this house who still believed in me. I didn't kiss him, didn't touch him, but I wanted to. And that want? It was enough to ruin everything. Nathan saw it, felt it, and now I can't undo the damage. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. I used to believe that if I kept everything in order, if the house was clean, the meals warm, the schedule tight, then maybe I wouldn't feel the emptiness creeping in. I'm 39 now, not old, not young, somewhere in that forgotten middle space where no one asks how you're doing anymore. My days are predictable: school drop-offs, grocery runs, folding laundry while daytime TV hums in the background. I smile at neighbors, wave at teachers, laugh when expected, but it's all muscle memory. Inside, I feel like I'm vanishing. As a single mother, everything I do is for my son, and I don't regret that. But some nights, when the house falls quiet and the light from the fridge washes over me as I stand there, pretending to look for something, I realize what I'm really searching for is myself. The version of me who used to feel something. Someone who was more than just dependable, more than invisible. The story doesn't begin with a bang. It begins in silence, in soft ache, in neglected glances, in the moments no one sees. That's where it starts, where all the lines begin to blur, where one forgotten woman starts to remember she still has a pulse. It was a Thursday evening when everything subtly shifted, nothing dramatic. No thunder, no breaking glass, just a quiet hum in the air, like the moment right before a summer storm. Nathan had invited a couple of friends over. Luca was working late again, and I told myself it was nothing. Just teens being teens. I made snacks, poured drinks, and stayed mostly in the kitchen. That's where I always stay. Out of the way, unseen. But that night, it was different. Their laughter wasn't just noise, it filled something inside the house. And maybe inside me too. I caught glimpses from the corner of my eye. A glance held a second too long. A compliment offered too warmly. And it wasn't just me imagining it, I felt it. In my chest, my skin, the back of my neck. One of them, Jonas, stood at the counter as I wiped it down for the third time. "You always make this place feel so comfortable," he said. I smiled politely, shrugged. But the way he looked at me, it wasn't the way a boy looks at someone's mom. It was slower, curious. I turned back to the sink. Heart suddenly too loud in my ears. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because I didn't trust my voice not to tremble. Later that night, after they'd gone and Nathan was up in his room, I sat on the edge of my bed in the half-dark. My fingertips still remembering the warmth of a glance. A word, a moment that shouldn't have mattered, but did. I told myself nothing happened. And it hadn't. Not really. But something had changed. In me, the air in the house felt heavier. Like it had absorbed my guilt, my confusion, my restless longing. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't in years, someone who wanted to be seen. Wanted to feel again, even if it meant skating too close to a line. I didn't dress provocatively. I wasn't inviting anything, but the way I tucked my blouse in that morning, the touch of gloss I hadn't worn in months, it wasn't accidental either. And that heat I felt, it wasn't from the oven or the summer air. It was internal, a slow-burning fire I hadn't realized was still alive, let alone capable of rising again. And the scariest part? A small, shameful part of me didn't want it to go out. The next few days blurred together. But the feeling lingered, like the warmth of fingers barely grazing your skin. Gone in a second but impossible to forget. I kept busy, kept moving, folding towels with more focus than necessary, scrubbing counters already clean, but the truth was, I couldn't scrub away the echo of Jonas's voice, or the way his eyes held mine for that fraction longer than they should have. I tried to convince myself it meant nothing, that I was reading too much into things. But when Nathan told me casually that Jonas and Caleb might come by again that weekend, to work on a group project, of course, I felt that flicker again. Not dread, not guilt, anticipation. Saturday came fast. Luca was gone again, some conference in Portland. Or at least that's what the calendar said. He'd left early with a quick kiss on my cheek and the same distracted energy I'd grown used to. I spent the morning cleaning. Then spent the afternoon pretending I hadn't. The boys arrived around 4. Nathan led them in, then disappeared upstairs with his headphones on and door shut, saying they'd work downstairs later. And just like that, it was me and them again. They settled in the living room, their backpacks tossed aside, snacks in hand. I brought in a tray of lemonade and fruit, trying to keep it casual. As I set it down, Jonas caught my eye. "You really didn't have to go through all this," he said, voice softer than before. I shrugged. "It's nothing, really," but we both knew it wasn't nothing. Not anymore. As the afternoon faded into early evening, the light through the windows turned amber. The air grew still, charged. I stayed nearby, reading a magazine I wasn't really reading, listening to them talk, laugh, occasionally glancing up to find Jonas already looking at me. Once, I caught Caleb watching too, more curious than anything else. There was no disrespect in it, no obvious flirtation, but the heat was there, unspoken, building. At one point, I passed Jonas in the hallway. We both paused, just for a beat, close enough to feel the electricity between us. He smiled, soft, almost nervous. "You look different lately," he said. My breath caught. "Different how?" He didn't answer, just looked at me, eyes flickering with something I didn't want to name. And I didn't stop him. I didn't step away. I just stood there, heart pounding, skin flushed, because in that moment, I didn't feel 39. I didn't feel invisible. I felt alive. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing down on me like a second skin. I kept replaying that moment in the hallway, Jonas's voice, his eyes, the air between us charged with something unspoken but undeniable. I hadn't done anything wrong. Nothing had happened, but my heart had betrayed me. It raced for the wrong reasons. It hoped for something I didn't have the courage to say out loud. Luca hadn't called, not even a text to say goodnight. I reached for my phone anyway, stared at the empty screen, then set it back down with a sigh. Across the hall, Nathan's room was quiet, but I couldn't help wondering, what does he see when he looks at me lately? Has something shifted in his eyes too? Or is it all in mine? The next morning, I made breakfast as usual. Eggs, toast, fruit, Nathan's favorite. I called up the stairs, but he didn't come down. I waited, listened, nothing, so I sat at the table alone, picking at my plate while the food grew cold. That ache returned, not just loneliness, but shame. Later, I found Jonas's hoodie draped over the arm of the couch. He must have forgotten it. I picked it up, held it for a moment too long. It smelled faintly of cologne and something else, youth. Maybe, that kind of ease that doesn't yet know the weight of consequences. I folded it gently, tucked it into the closet. That afternoon, Nathan emerged briefly, long enough to refill his water and avoid my eyes. The way he moved around me, careful, distant, said more than words ever could. He was pulling back, and part of me feared he knew. Not about anything physical, there was nothing to know. But something had shifted in me, and maybe it showed more than I thought. That evening, I sat outside on the back steps with a glass of wine, watching the sun bleed into the horizon. I felt the heat of it even as it faded, that kind of heat. The one you can't explain but can't forget either. And in that moment, with the sky darkening and the house behind me so quiet it hurt, I realized something that terrified me. I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want to go back to numb. Even if the fire was dangerous, at least it was fire. A few days later, there was a knock at the door, gentle, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they should be there. I opened it to find Jonas standing alone, hands in his pockets, eyes flicking up to meet mine with a mix of apology and something else, something warmer. "I think I left my hoodie," he said, voice low. I could have just handed it to him and sent him on his way. I should have, but instead, I stepped back and said, "Come in, I'll grab it." He nodded and followed, quiet, respectful, but I could feel the tension between us, thick and unspoken. I retrieved the hoodie from the hallway closet, holding it out with both hands. He reached for it but didn't take it right away. Our fingers brushed. My breath hitched. His lingered. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable the other day," he said softly. "You didn't," I answered too quickly. Then again, slower. "You didn't." There was a pause, long and dense with everything neither of us dared to say. Then he looked at me, not like a boy looking at someone older. Someone off limits, but like a man seeing a woman. I notice things," he said, "the way you carry yourself. The way you look at people when they're not looking. It's like you're always watching but never being watched." His words burned through me, not because they were inappropriate, but because they were true. "I don't know what you're trying to say," I whispered, though part of me did. "I'm not trying," he said. I think you deserve more than what you're getting." I stepped back, heart pounding. The silence that followed was louder than any confession. We both stood there, caught in that unbearable middle space between right and wrong. "I should go," Jonas said finally, gripping the hoodie now like a lifeline. I nodded. "Yeah, you should." He left without another word, and I closed the door behind him slowly. My hands trembling, I pressed my forehead against the wood and exhaled. Nothing had happened, but everything almost had. And that kind of almost, it stays with you. It lives in the heat of your skin. The silence in a hallway. The echo of footsteps that shouldn't have felt so hard to let go. That night, I barely moved from the kitchen. I stood at the counter, staring into the dark backyard through the window above the sink. The lights inside were low. The silence thick. I could still feel the warmth of Jonas's presence. His words replaying like a song I wasn't supposed to love. "You deserve more than what you're getting." I hated how much that sentence nestled into me. How easily it unraveled the threads I'd kept tightly wound for so long. I told myself I was being foolish. That I was a grown woman. A mother. That he was just a boy speaking out of turn. But the truth was, Jonas had seen me, and it wasn't in a way that felt inappropriate. It was worse, it felt honest. The next day, Nathan barely looked at me. He left early, slammed the door without saying goodbye. I wanted to stop him, to ask if he was angry, if he somehow knew, but what would I even say? I hadn't done anything, except want, except feel, except allow myself to respond to a fire I thought had long gone out. Luca called that afternoon, voice as distant as ever. "Flight got delayed," he muttered. "Don't wait up." I didn't even answer. That evening, as dusk crept into the house, I heard the soft knock again, barely audible, like hesitation given form. I didn't check the peephole. I knew it was him. Jonas stood there, this time with nothing in his hands. No excuse to lean on. "I shouldn't have come back," he said. I couldn't stop thinking about the way you looked at me." I didn't invite him in. I didn't need to. The threshold between us wasn't the front door. It was the tension, the awareness, the breathless silence that stretched and refused to snap. "You need to go," I whispered, but my voice didn't match my eyes. He nodded. "I know." He stepped back, but not before reaching out. His fingers grazed mine. Just for a second, that touch, barely there, painfully real, set my skin on fire. Then he turned, walked away, and disappeared into the night. I closed the door with trembling hands. Nothing had happened, and yet, my whole world had shifted. Again. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. The mirror didn't lie, my eyes were tired. But not from lack of sleep. From feeling too much. I stood in the bathroom in my robe, staring at my reflection like she was someone else. Someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone alive. The woman looking back wasn't just a mother or a wife. She was flushed, restless, full of something dangerous and deeply human, want. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Nathan was gone already, early. Again, no note, no goodbye. The plate I'd made for him sat cold on the counter. The silence between us had become louder than any argument ever could. And still, Luca hadn't called. Not last night, not this morning. Maybe he was just as absent as I felt. Later that day, I found myself sitting on the edge of the bed, folding laundry with Jonas's face flashing in my mind, the way he looked at me. Like I wasn't invisible, like he saw not just a body, but a woman buried under years of neglect. That terrified me more than anything, because I hadn't asked for it, but I also hadn't stopped it. Not when I could have. The line had blurred, I hadn't crossed it, but my toes were right on the edge, testing it, and the worst part? I didn't feel guilt, I felt heat, I felt alive, and that made the guilt come rushing in twice as hard. That evening, Luca finally came home. He walked in with a phone pressed to his ear, set his bag by the stairs, kissed my cheek without looking at me. "What's for dinner?" he asked, scrolling through his screen like I wasn't even there. And I realized, I wasn't. I moved through the kitchen like a ghost, preparing his favorite meal out of habit, not love. He didn't ask about Nathan. Didn't ask about me. He didn't notice the tension in my hands, the hesitation in my voice, because he never noticed anymore. That night, after we ate in silence, I sat by the window alone. My hands cradled a cup of tea that had long gone cold. I stared at the streetlight outside, waiting for something I couldn't name. And all I could think was, what happens the next time he knocks? Because I wasn't sure I'd have the strength to close the door. The next time the knock came, it wasn't gentle, it was confident, steady. It was him, and I knew, even before I opened the door. Jonas stood there in the fading light. No backpack, no hoodie, no reason, just presence. His jaw was tense, eyes scanning mine like he was looking for something he wasn't sure I'd let him find. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "I know," I whispered. But neither of us moved. The air between us pulsed, thick with what hadn't been said. What hadn't been done, but lived in every stolen glance. Every word that had lingered longer than it should have. I stepped aside, not because I was brave, not because I wanted to, because I didn't trust myself not to. He stepped in slowly, quietly, the door closing behind him like a line being drawn. The living room was dim. Luca was at the office late again. Nathan hadn't come home yet. The house was empty, but I felt full, too full, of emotion, of confusion, of desire I hadn't let myself name until that exact moment. Jonas sat on the edge of the couch. Not close, not far. His hands rested on his knees, fidgeting slightly. I couldn't stop thinking about the way you looked at me. The way you didn't look away. I swallowed. My throat felt too tight for words. I should have said something to stop it, to ground us, but I didn't. I just sat down across from him, hands folded, heart hammering like it wanted out. "You think I don't know what this is?" I finally said, voice low, trembling. "It's loneliness. It's you being young, and me being..." I stopped. He looked up, eyes steady. "It's not about age. It's about attention. It's about someone seeing you when no one else does." That broke something in me. Not because it was seductive, but because it was true. I'd spent so long being invisible that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be fully seen, not just as someone's wife, someone's mother, but as a woman. I stood, unsure of whether I'd ask him to leave or pull him closer. But before I could move, the front door creaked open. "Nathan." He stepped in, froze mid-step. Our eyes met. And in that flash of stillness, I saw the beginning of the end. Nathan didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His eyes moved from me to Jonas, then back to me, slowly, deliberately. His face didn't twist in anger, didn't crumble in betrayal, it just froze. Cold, blank. But that emptiness hit harder than any outburst could have. "Hey, man," Jonas said quickly, standing, too fast, too casual, but the tension in his voice betrayed him. I was just stopping by to drop something off. Nathan didn't respond. He set his keys on the hallway table with an eerie calm. Then walked past us, his shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, backpack still slung over one arm. As he passed, he didn't look at either of us. Not really, but the silence he left in his wake? It screamed. Jonas turned to me, eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen in him before. "I should go," he said. I nodded, barely able to breathe. "Yes." He moved to the door. Hesitated for just a second, like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. He slipped out into the night, leaving the door ajar behind him. I stood there, staring at that inch of open space. The cool air creeping in, chilling the fire I'd tried so hard to ignore. I closed it softly, then turned, unsure whether to go upstairs and face Nathan or collapse right there in the hallway. I chose neither. I walked into the kitchen, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark. My heartbeat echoed in my ears like a warning. Not because something had happened, because something had almost happened. And someone had seen it. Upstairs, I heard Nathan's bedroom door shut. Not a slam, just a click. Final, quiet, but more cutting than any scream. He knew, or at least, he suspected enough to put together what I hadn't yet dared to admit. What I felt wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. And I wasn't the only one paying for it anymore. I sat there for a long time, staring into nothing, the room thick with regret. The heat I'd been feeding for weeks, the ache, the pulse, the thrill, it had turned cold, heavy, and now the silence in the house wasn't empty. It was full of judgment, full of shame. And I had no idea how to fix it. The next morning, I stood outside Nathan's door, plate in hand, eggs, toast, just like always. My fingers trembled slightly as I knocked. A gentle tap against wood that suddenly felt like a wall. "Nathan," I said softly, "I made you breakfast." No response, not even a rustle of movement. Just that thick, punishing silence. I waited, heart clenched, willing him to answer, to open the door, to give me anything, but it stayed closed. I set the plate down on the floor and stepped back. It felt pathetic, standing there like that, waiting for crumbs of forgiveness I didn't deserve. Later, I heard muffled voices from behind the door. He was on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I couldn't move. The words came low, sharp. I don't even know what she was thinking. She let him in, I mean, all of them, like it was no big deal. A pause, then a whisper that shattered me. "I don't think she even cares." I backed away, my breath catching in my throat. I clutched the hallway wall as if it could hold the weight of what I'd just heard. I wanted to knock again. To beg, "No, you don't understand. I care. I care so much it's killing me." But I didn't. Instead, I walked back downstairs, each step heavier than the last. I sat at the kitchen table, the untouched breakfast still warm between my shaking hands. I couldn't eat. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, guilt thick in my chest. My mind screaming with questions I couldn't answer. What had he seen? What had he felt in that moment at the door? Betrayal? Disgust? Confusion? Had I ruined something that was already fragile just because I wanted to feel something again? I buried my face in my hands, the tears falling before I could stop them. The truth was, I didn't even know how far I'd gone. I hadn't crossed the line physically, but emotionally, spiritually, silently? Maybe that was worse. Because I'd hurt someone who trusted me, even if I hadn't meant to, even if all I did was let them in. And no matter how much I wished I could go back and slam the door shut, I knew it was too late.